For the past several years, the horror genre seems to have been enjoying another renaissance. From 2017's Get Out and 2018's Hereditary to 2019's Ready or Not and 2020's Possessor. Uncut. Movies in this category are reaching new artistic heights, providing sharp social commentary, and giving us lots and lots of gore. Newer doesn't necessarily mean better, and if you look back through the decades, it's true you'll find all kinds of wacky, wild recipes you can't fathom anyone actually eating. Velveeta and pearl onions, anyone? But take a page out of your grandma's recipe book when it comes to desserts, and you'll find a whole bunch of ideas her generation loved. And yours will, too. Let's find out what a Knickerbocker Glory is, whether or not there's mayo in mayonnaise cake, and why we need to bring back some of the desserts that were popular decades ago. Icebox cake. Today's homes might have refrigerators instead of an icebox, but an icebox cake is still a brilliant dessert for those times you're looking for something delicious, versatile, and, above all, simple. According to Susan Stafford Kelly, via Our State, they do actually date back to an era where most people used an icebox to keep their foodstuffs cold, and there's no right or wrong way to make this one. This is all great news as far as fans are concerned. The more horror films receive positive reviews and box office success, the more get made, and the more we have to watch. The new year appears to be off to a solid start, with the following films certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes in early 2021. Basically, you're layering cookies with whipped cream, and then adding some garnish. Chill until it's firm, then cut it like a cake. Super easy and super amazing, right? The sky's the limit when it comes to making this one, but if you're looking for inspiration, we have some suggestions. There are many choices in different flavors of the genre, from the body horror of Saint Maud to two outrageous Nicolas Cage vehicles. The category is once again primed to dominate the discourse and scare the heck out of as many viewers as possible. Films that have already been released are listed according to their freshness rating. There's this amazing Oreo icebox cake from The Kitchen Is My Playground, and there's this delicious peanut butter version from Crazy for Crust. How about going a little salty with this salted caramel icebox cake from Lauren's latest? You can pack this one full of all kinds of summer fruits, too, like Cakes Cottage does with their summer berry icebox cake. Seriously, why haven't you made one of these already? Mayonnaise cake. According to author and baker Anne Byrne, via NPR, the difficult years of the Great Depression led to the development of a cake recipe calling for one of the most unlikely ingredients, mayonnaise. The mayo took the place of eggs and oil, and she says that while there's a bit of saltiness to the cake, it's incredibly moist. And we need to start making it again. We've also included some films we're hyped to see that have release dates later in the year. The perfect place to start is with this recipe for a triple chocolate mayonnaise cake from Manila Spoon. Because seriously, a chocolate cake is even better when it's super moist, and this one has that covered. Grab your popcorn bowl, dim the lights, and settle in for some scares, or at least some trippy acting and visuals. Here are the best horror films of 2021. Saint Maud. A24's Saint Maud has made the rounds of film festivals since 2019. But it didn't get an official release until January 29, 2021, with streaming availability following on Feb. Chocolate filling, dark chocolate ganache, chocolate chips. 2021. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? For a bit of a different take on a chocolate mayonnaise cake, check out this one from Restless Chipotle. Writer, director Rose Glass makes an impressive debut. Judging by the film's current 93% certified fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes and Metascore of 83 on Metacritic, which puts it in their must-see category. The film stars Welsh actress Morfydd Clark as Maud, a nurse whose piety masks a shady past. The coffee adds a brilliantly different flavor, and chocolate isn't all you can do. How about a mayonnaise spice cake with caramel eggnog glaze, like this one from Easy Peasy Meals? Cut yourself a giant slice of this alongside a piping hot cup of chai tea, and it might be your new go-to autumn dessert. Banana pudding. Robert Moss over at Serious Eats says not only was banana pudding one of your grandma's favorites, but it was the favorite of grandmas and grandpas, as far back as post-Civil War. Maud becomes the hospice provider for Amanda, Jennifer L., but her care turns into an obsession with her ward's soul. Praise for the psychological horror of Saint Maud is high.
David Fear of Rolling Stone called it a genuine revelation, and the sort of holy terror that restores your faith in a genre. And Katie Walsh of the Los Angeles Times wrote, Glass has crafted a film rich in history, reference, psychology, spirituality, style, and even some gore, but it never overstays its welcome, recognizing that less is more. Positive buzz for Saint Maud has been building steadily since its premiere, and it's become the first genuine horror hit of the 2021 pandemic world. The film has won several awards on the festival circuit, including the Attenborough Award for British-Irish Film of the Year at 2021's London Critics' Circle Film Awards. Saint Maud is rated R for gore and sexual content, and clocks in at a tight 84 minutes. The film is available on Amazon Prime. PG. Psycho Goreman. From its title alone, the Canadian film PG. Psycho Goreman sounds like a new trauma picture, with all the over-the-top violence that studio usually entails. Hatched from the mind of writer-director Stephen Kostanski, whom you may remember from the indie horror flick he co-wrote, co-directed in 2016, The Void, the plot sounds like the kind of midnight movie made for the horror comedy camp audience. A young brother, Owen Meyer, and sister, Nita Jose Hanna, find an alien, Matthew Ninnaber, give him the titular name, and control him with a magical amulet. With more trade happening between America and the Caribbean, bananas were a hot new trend. The 1920s introduced the banana pudding your grandma was probably familiar with, the one with vanilla wafers. Gory hijinks ensue. After being acquired by RLJE Films and Shudder, PG. Psycho Goreman had its debut on streaming and in theaters on January 22, 2021. That's the one we need to bring back. If you're looking for something truly vintage, check out this 1956 recipe from Click Americana. The film is sitting at 89% on Rotten Tomatoes, with a lot of praise for Kostanski's ability to blend and send up science fiction, fantasy, horror, and comedy. Film Threats Rob Rector says, the movie's ability to flirt with the familiar and completely turn it on its head is what keeps Psycho Goreman so perversely fresh and fun throughout, while Marybeth McAndrews of Paste magazine calls it a necessary explosion of ridiculous fun in a time when it's needed most. The film may currently be rented on Amazon Prime and is not rated. Prisoners of the Ghostland. Fresh off its debut at the 2021 Sundance Film Festival, Prisoners of the Ghostland is the latest project from Gonzo director Shion Sono. The movie is a wild tale of a bank robber ironically called Hero, Nicolas Cage, who is forced by the corrupt head of Samurai Town to find his daughter, Bernice, Sophia Boutella, or die trying. Horror vet Bill Moseley plays the governor, the crime boss who outfits Hero in an explosive suit and gives him 3 days to find Bernice or lose everything. Prisoners of the Ghostland, which is Sono's English-language debut, was originally going to be filmed in Mexico until Sono suffered a heart attack, which changed production plans. You might not be able to find gel well anymore, but you can find Jell-O. And if you want something that's a little more complicated, a bit updated, and definitely not diet-friendly, Popsugar has a recipe for the banana pudding from the famous Magnolia Bakery. The film doesn't seem worse for the change. Sure, there's several cups of heavy cream, but sometimes, you just need to indulge. Baked Alaska. The most fundamental part of a baked Alaska, using meringue as an insulator, dates back to the turn of the 18th century, but according to NPR's look at this dessert's strange history, it didn't become popular until the 1920s and 1930s. It was a dessert you got for special occasions, and if you were to try your hand at making it in your own kitchen, you can guarantee it's going to be no less special. Live for Cake can start you off with a recipe for s'mores baked Alaska that combines all your favorite campfire flavors in an entirely unexpected dessert. That's just one option for this versatile dessert, and just check out the Crummy Kitchen's pistachio and chai baked Alaska for combination that's nothing short of epic. The juxtaposition of Western tropes against the backdrop of Japan gives the film a lot of its kick. If you're looking for a slightly boozy option that's sure to be a hit at any party, try Half-Baked Harvest's bourbon and caramelized peach baked Alaska. Though it was enthusiastically received by the audience at Sundance, some viewers were less than enthralled. Given Sono's prolific output, he's got over 50 films under his belt, not all of them can be winners. However, other critics have echoed the Sundance audience buzz. And for a seasonal delight, try this pumpkin spice baked Alaska from Life, Love and Sugar.
Little White Lies. Hannah Woodhead calls it an excellent introduction to the director for anyone who hasn't dipped into his filmography, and praises Cage's solid, snarling turn. Christy Puchko of Mel magazine says, it's bonkers. It's brilliant. It's Nicolas Cage in all his give no fucks glory. It may not be Sono's or Cage's best work, but it's resonating with their fans, and it sure sounds like a wild ride. As of March 2021, the unrated film is pending distribution. Sacrifice and co-directors Andy Collier and Tor Meehan. Sacrifice, pregnant Emma, Sophie Stevens, and her husband Isaac, Ludovic Hughes, travel to Isaac's birthplace in Norway because he has to take care of his recently deceased mother's property. It'll make you glad any time of the year can be pumpkin spice time. Rhubarb pie. According to History.com, rhubarb has had something of an up and down run as far as popularity. It was everywhere in Victorian England, but by World War II the younger generation considered it an old-fashioned sort of ingredient. It's about time we gave rhubarb another chance, especially if you cringed at the idea when you were younger, so let's talk about rhubarb pie. We'll look to Sally's baking addiction for a recipe for one of the rhubarb pie standards, the strawberry rhubarb. Not only is it wonderfully sweet, but there's some tips here on how to avoid the sogginess that can ruin this delicate pie. There, they deal with the local sheriff, played by famed horror actress Barbara Crampton, and run afoul of a cult that worships a sea god. Cults are horror movie staples, from the original 1973 version of The Wicker Man to 2019's Midsommar. While Sacrifice has drawn at least one comparison to the latter because of its Scandinavian setting, just judging from the tentacles on the poster, it appears to have more in common with HP for something a little different, but equally amazing. Check out Foxy Folksy's rhubarb pie. This one uses blueberries instead of strawberries, and tops it with a crumble crust instead of a lattice. And if you've already warmed up to the idea of rhubarb, how about this rhubarb custard pie from the Creative Bite? The Brown Betty. According to Chowhound, the Brown Betty has been around since the 1860s, and their research seems to suggest that this seemingly inoffensive dessert has its roots in a racially segregated South. But regardless of its origins, the actual dessert described by the term, Brown Betty, deserves a revival, even if the attitudes that named it need to stay squarely in the past. If you're at all familiar with the Brown Betty, a fruity dessert with a crumble topping, you've probably had the apple version, like this one from Happy Money Saver. Lovecraft. Cat Hughes of The Hollywood News calls the movie, mysteriously moody and chillingly atmospheric, while Stacey Lane Wilson of Women in Horror says, Sacrifice is a beautifully shot, well-acted film that builds tension expertly. The film has a 75% freshness rating on Rotten Tomatoes, but that's based on only 12 reviews, so its standing here could be surpassed as the year goes on. You can use a variety of fruits with the same basic concept, though, and almost any one of them makes an amazing, warm dessert that's particularly perfect for any chilly night. The film is not rated. Reunion home is often where the horror is. Mel's Kitchen Cafe has a recipe for a peach Brown Betty, Half-Baked Harvest has a blueberry version, and Blessed Beyond Crazy even has a pear version. And, if you're looking for something that fits the criteria of being an old favorite and completely reimagined, try this rum raisin apple Brown Betty from Vintage Kitty. Tapioca pudding. Tapioca comes from the cassava plant, and it can come in different forms. According to the Food Timeline, it's been popular for a long time. The New Zealand film Reunion continues the theme of the past catching up with the present, this time in the form of Ellie, Emma Draper, a pregnant woman fleeing her abusive partner and heading to her childhood home to reconcile with her estranged mother, Ivy, Julia Ormond. Ellie leaves one awful situation only to end up in another. But it was only in 1894 that the Minute Tapioca brand made it not only accessible, but so easy to make it became a household staple. With a 71% freshness rating, Reunion appears to hit a sweetly terrifying spot. Reunion has had a limited release in theaters and streaming beginning Feb. Problems with importing it took it off the shelves during World War II, and it's safe to say it never reached its pre-war popularity again. 2021, and is written and directed by Jake Mahaffey, a filmmaker, photographer, and artist currently known more for his short films. Reviewer Alexandra Heller-Nicholas of the Alliance of Women Film Journalists calls it a compelling, well-made film that creeps up on you, while Anton Beidel of Projected Figures says it is a nuanced, slippery psychodrama. The film is not rated. Willys Wonderland released on Feb. It's time to give this old favorite a try, and that's exactly what Fried Dandelions does with their recipe for a chocolate tapioca pudding everyone's sure to love. Chocolate is a favorite for everyone, and once you've introduced your family to the idea of this admittedly odd-textured dessert with a popular flavor, branch out a bit and try Neurotic Mommy's vanilla and coconut tapioca pudding. Added bonus, this one's sugar-free. And for something that's equal parts fruity and fun, try Radiant Rachel's Mango Sago tapioca pudding. It's so bright and elegant you'll be proud to serve this one up at any party, and be sure to tell them it's a pre-war favorite re-envisioned. Upside-down cake. There's nothing that says, vintage, quite like a pineapple upside-down cake, and that's for a good reason. Decades before anyone ever made one with pineapple, the principle of making a cake upside down in a skillet was pretty common. According to historian and chef Gil Marks, also a writer for ToryAV.com, the first mention of an upside-down cake specifically involving caramelized fruit came in 1923, and no one's quite sure who the first person was to use pineapple. 2021. In both theaters and on streaming services, Willys Wonderland is another wild ride with the illustrious Mr. There's a traditional recipe after Mark's history on ToryAV.com, but if you can also update this old classic. For a light, fluffy version that has a coffee cake bottom, check out this one from Avery Cooks. Cage. But you're wondering, what if someone in the house doesn't like pineapple? Some of the earliest recipes used entirely different fruits, and so can you. Rock Recipes has this amazing apple upside-down cake, and if you're looking for an excuse to buy peaches this season, there's no better reason than this cinnamon, sugar, and bourbon peach upside-down cake from how sweet it is. Natasha's Kitchen has a cherry version, and you don't even have to use fruit with Live for Cake's caramel almond upside-down cake. Yes, please. Pavlova today, there's plenty of people who are craving something sweet but light after their meal, something that won't weigh them down. Cage plays the janitor, a man desperate for cash who agrees to clean the titular amusement center in a small town. That's exactly why the light, airy Pavlova needs to make a comeback. According to Food 52, it's not clear who invented Pavlova or where it came from. Australia and New Zealand have been fighting over the honors. But we do know it was named after the ballerina Anna Pavlova, specifically, its resemblance to her tutu. Whatever the origins, this classic dessert is one perfect for anyone who's looking for something light and sweet for their post-meal taste buds. It turns out the animatronic characters at Willys are possessed, because of course they are. It's less a fright fest than a fun, violent, Five Nights at Freddy's escromp. The latest effort from director Kevin Lewis, working from a script by Geo Cooks with Cocktails, has a brilliant Pavlova recipe that pairs cherries and a red wine compote with mascarpone whipped cream. And while that's perfect for summer fruit season, Keep It Sweet Desserts has a cinnamon apple one that's just what you're looking for when the season starts to give way to fall. Use Your Noodles has a completely different take, putting chocolate ganache and hazelnut whipped cream over their pavlova. And if you're looking for elegant, The Pretty Blog has a pavlova that's filled with figs, nuts, espresso, and brown sugar. Parsons has ticked up to 64% on Rotten Tomatoes since its premiere. Book Club will never be the same. Knickerbocker Glory. Harry Potter fans might recognize the dessert called the Knickerbocker Glory, and while there's some debate over whether it was first created in the UK or the US, Matthew Robinson, author of Knickerbocker Glory, A Chef's Guide to Innovation in the Kitchen and Beyond, via Huffington Post, says it reached its height of popularity in the 1930s. Nick Shagger of the Daily Beast says that the movie ably fulfills its promise as a bonkers saga, and The Hollywood Reporter's Frank Scheck notes that nowadays, Cage's movies don't have to be reviewed, but rather stamped with official certificates of weirdness. Of the two Gonzo Cage performances this year, the janitor isn't quite as captivating as his oddly magnetic hero in Prisoners of the Ghostland. Even so, being blessed with two outrageous Cage characters in two cuckoo bananas horror films in 1 year is a boon for fans of the actor's late career work. It's more of a concept than a defined dessert, and you might even have everything you need to make it right now. Food Roots blog tracked down one of the original recipes, and it involved layering a series of ingredients, ice cream, chocolate syrup, whipped cream, and essence of rose, into a tall glass. The 88-minute film is not rated. The best upcoming 2021 horror movies. We can't wait to watch. Several hotly anticipated horror films that have been held back due to the pandemic are now slated to come out later this year. These are the ones we're most excited to see. Set to be released on August. It's evolved a bit since then, and food bloggers of Canada say the recipe is simply stacking the ingredients right. A fruit cream curd layer at the bottom, then a crunchy layer, a cakey layer, an ice cream layer, more fruit cream curd, more crunch, and whipped cream on top. 2021. The update of Candyman takes place 10 years after the original Cabrini Green Towers were demolished. Nia Da Costa directs a high-powered cast, including Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, Tiona Paris, Coleman Domingo, and Tony Todd, and is credited on the script along with Jordan Peele and Wynn Rosenfeld. Todd is particularly pleased to be involved. The film is rated R. A Quiet Place Part 2 was scheduled for September 17, 2021, but was recently moved up to Memorial Day weekend, May 28, 2021. It's easy and delicious, and if you need some ideas, check out Olive Magazine's boozy Knickerbocker Glory, made with sloe gin, blueberries, cherries, strawberry jelly, and raspberry ice cream, or the Culinary Exchange's salted caramel and apple version. Ambrosia. You're familiar with Ambrosia, and you may have even had someone bring this odd, somewhat questionable dish to some family get-togethers over the years. It's older than you think, with early recipes dating back to the mid-19th century. According to Serious Eats, it was firmly entrenched in Southern cuisine by the 1920s, and it was particularly popular around Christmas. Writer-director John Krasinski returns to helm the mayhem as the surviving members of the Abbott family try to defeat the alien invaders from the first film. It's that nostalgia that's earned it a place among our desserts that need to make a comeback. Try this version from Six Sisters stuff for a fluffy, strawberry dessert that will absolutely earn your respect. Will their knowledge and experience save them from the human terror that lurks beyond? Emily Blunt again stars as Evelyn Abbott, with Cillian Murphy joining as Emmett. Farm Wife Cooks has whipped up an easy version that uses pineapple, grapes, and blueberries for a light, fresh taste sure to please, and mostly homemade Mom has a cranberry and pineapple take on Ambrosia that is just begging to be at the table for your next Thanksgiving dinner. The film is rated PG-13. You can't keep a good killer down, at least not in the Halloween franchise. Jamie Lee Curtis, Judy Greer, and Andy Matichak reprise their roles as Laurie Strode, her daughter Karen, and her granddaughter Allison, respectively, as rampaging killer Michael Myers returns yet again to face the formidable trio. Halloween Kills is the second part of a trilogy that began with 2018's Halloween, a direct sequel to the original 1978 film of the same name. Still suspicious about the texture and the inevitable sweetness? Try something completely different with this ambrosia pie from Spend with Pennies. It's flexible enough that you can adjust this for any taste, season, or occasion, and even better. It's sure to bring a smile to anyone's face when it's served up. Jell-O desserts. If you've watched any television show set in the 1950s or 1960s, you've seen these things. David Gordon Green again directs from a script he wrote with Danny McBride and Scott Teems. They're usually made with a bundt pan, made popular by the Pillsbury Bake Off, and they're essentially Jell-O filled with things that. The film is scheduled to be released on October 15, 2021, and is rated R. Produced by Academy Award-winning director Guillermo del Toro and directed by Scott Cooper. Antlers, which stars Kerry Russell and Jesse Plemons, will be released on October 29, 2021. Well, let's just say most of them don't look appetizing in the least. The Kitchen says these wiggly, wobbly, weird desserts became popular about the same time women started working outside the home, and when they needed a dessert, they needed something fast. Get creative, and you'll find you can make pretty impressive things with it, like this strawberry flan Jell-O cake from Living Sweet Moments. There's a cake layer, a flan layer, and a Jell-O layer, and you can do this with any flavors you like. And we know you love these versatile recipes. Ever After in the Woods has a gorgeous recipe for layered Jell-O bars that, like the name suggests, really do look like sea glass. And this one has "Pool Party" written all over it. The mysterious R-rated film's trailer features an unseen creature, a young boy, and a lot of blood. And we didn't forget the most fun use for Jell-O, the Jell-O shot. These Bailey's Irish Cream Jell-O shots from a spicy perspective are a perfect bite-sized dessert. And since they're not that strong, no one's going to get plastered. Bread pudding. The idea of bread pudding goes back a long, long time, back to the 11th century, according to the Daily Gazette. We're talking about Grandma, though, and the Apron Archive says this dessert became popular during the Great Depression and stayed that way through the war years. Nothing went to waste during these long, frugal days, and bread pudding was a great way to use stale bread. If you've ever had a basic bread pudding, you'll know it's an acquired taste for one big reason: the texture. It's all in your choice of bread, though. Use something super firm like brioche, and you'll love it. Doubt us? Start with a recipe like this chocolate chip cookie dough bread pudding from Call Me PMC and you'll change how you think of bread pudding. It's another great seasonal dish, too. Try this one with its bourbon caramel sauce, from Let's Eat Cake, or this pumpkin praline bread pudding, from Flavor Mosaic, for Thanksgiving. And for those cold winter months? How about this eggnog bread pudding with warm whiskey sauce from the Crummy Kitchen? How fast can you say yes to that one?